can see you.
We can see your screen. Yep, sure.
No, this half an hour talk is only on a very specific aspect of statistics like data, central tendency, and dispersion. Okay, so these are the basic starting aspects of any statistical course. So let me first take, unless we have a data, we cannot have information which translates into knowledge. But then, as Dalai Lama said, wisdom is more important. And that is where the statistics comes into play. Rudra, am I clear?
Yeah, you are clear, but we can't see you. Can anyone see sir on the screen?
I can see him on the screen, Rudra.
Okay, that's fine. Go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah, I think you're clear.
Is it okay?
Yeah, it is. It is.
Now, if you look at the solar system, now this is a solar system, and no matter whether there are 8 planets or 9 planets, the moment we say it's a solar system, we know that the sun is the center. So just imagine the data as the various planets and how they are scattered. That's called as dispersion, and the center is called the central tendency. These 3 topics we will discuss in next half an hour. But remember, for statistics, when we do a study sitting in Calcutta, we are doing just taking a few samples, say 250 patients or 130 patients, but actually we want to know what's happening in the population at large, entire world or entire country. So bear in mind, the sample can never ever equal the population, but we can give you an indication what could be happening in the population. This is the basic concept of any statistical tests. And I'm going to explore it later. Topics for this evening, data can be 2 types broadly, categorical or continuous. We will discuss about the central tendency, which is usually measured by mean and median. The dispersion is measured by range, standard deviation, and often as standard error of mean. As I said, data can be broadly divided into categorical or continuous. Now, supposing if I want to know the incidence of cancer of gallbladder in rural Bengal, so I pick up 4 districts like Mednipur, Bankura, Malda, and Cooch Behar. So 4 large groups, okay? This is the categorical data, and they are usually called as nominal data. 4 or 5 large groups, categories, okay? But a more abridged version of this categorical data is, say, male and female, diabetes present or not, whether the patient received preoperative radiotherapy or no preoperative radiotherapy. Basically 2 units, yes or no. These are called as dichotomous categorical data, right? So we have nominal, and much abridged version is dichotomous. Third form of categorical data, which I think Rudra just showed, is supposing I want to evaluate how much trainee, the fellows, our surgical trainees, think of their faculties. So I have devised a scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Say the fellows receive adequate operative exposure. The faculty, the trainer, the surgeon, routinely assists the fellows and take them through the operation. The surgical unit organizes regular teaching programs. So you have to rate from 1 to 5. These kind of data are called as ordinal data. There's an order, like 1 means very bad, 5 means very good. But what is 1, what is 2, what is the gap between 2 and 3 and 3 and 4 is not mentioned. This is a drawback of ordinal data. This is quite common with the psychiatrist, these kind of data collection. So just to summarize, categorical data can be nominal, dichotomous, or ordinal. Say this is how you will do in your thesis. For example, say your hypothesis is diabetics have more incidence of wound infection. So you have the hospital number, ID, diabetes yes or no, wound infection yes or no. Very simple categorical variable. But the next on, we move on to the next kind of data, say age of the patients or fasting blood sugar, etc. So this is continuous. This is called as continuous, and they're actually quantitative data. But there is a correlation between continuous and categorical in the sense that if we, this is a continuous data, but if we group them, say group A is 20 years to 30 years, group B is 31 to 40, the same continuous data becomes categorical data. Okay, this is how we can play with the data. Now, small quiz, for example, age, is this categorical or continuous? This is a continuous data. Gender, male, female, this is categorical. ECOG status, 1, 2, 3, 4, this is categorical. BMI, numbers, this is continuous data. ASA before surgery is categorical, ASA 1, ASA 3. Fasting blood sugar, this is a continuous. Whether the patient had a biliary stent before Whipple, yes, no. These are categorical data. The next theme of this evening is a central tendency. As I said in the cartoon, that a single value to define the center of a distribution and which represents the entire data. For example, if you take up the Calcutta Shirurgi Collective, and if you mention Dr. Sanjay Deboksi, we all, associate him with CCC. That's a central tendency, right? So what happened? Now, supposing I work in Tata Medical Center, so I want to estimate the hemoglobin of the various staff of the hospital. So these are the various samples which I have taken, right? So this is a sample hemoglobin of various hospital staff. So how do I calculate the mean? I add up all the hemoglobin, divide by the number of sample. In this example, there are 8 staff. That comes to, the mean is 10.1. So for this sample, the central tendency as measured by mean is 10.1. And it gives me a ballpark estimate of the hemoglobin in the staff, right? Next. But if I increase the number of the sample, and for example, in Rajarhat, if I take 2,000 female and go door to door, measure the hemoglobin, and just draw a scatter plot, and this is what will happen. Now, if you just visualize, we can superimpose the standard curve on this, okay? This is a bell-shaped curve or standard curve, Gaussian curve, normal distribution, it is all symmetrically, and this is the mean of 9, okay? This is what we call as a standard distribution. Now, so if in this sample, the mean was 10, okay? In some staff, the hemoglobin was less than 10. In some, it was more than 10, right? This is called as variance. That means how much a sample is varying along the mean on either side. And in this example, the range is minimum 7.1 to maximum is 12.5. And this distance is the variance. If I take you a step forward, now these are the sample hemoglobin in 8 staff. The mean hemoglobin was 10.1. So what I do, I subtract the sample from the mean. This is called as variance. So some are less as minus, some are more than the mean is plus. What I then do is I square each variance, right? So the square of a minus is a plus. Then I add up all the square of variance, which comes to 21.1, okay? This I divide by n minus 1. N is the number of sample, which was 8. So I have to divide by 7, n minus 1. That gives me the figure of 3. And then I do the square root, which comes to 1.7. Okay, just 1 minute, Rudra, just hang on. Right. So 1.7 is the standard deviation. Now, what does it mean? It means the variation of the sample around the mean. That is 1.7 standard deviation. I'll explore this little further. I showed you this graph, the standard distribution. And this example, this is the weight. 80 kg is the mean weight, right? And the standard deviation is 5 kg. The SD has the same unit as the mean. Now, if I calculate plus 1 SD, it comes to 85. If plus 2 SD is 90. And if I go to the left, which is less than the mean, this is minus 1 standard deviation. This is minus 2 standard deviation. So if you look at the minus 2 standard deviation to plus 2 standard deviation, it covers 95% of the sample. Okay, is it clear? But if I go to minus 3 standard deviation to plus 3 standard deviation, it covers 99.7, almost 100%. Okay, this is the beauty of standard deviation. It lets you know how much it fluctuates on either side of the mean. Okay, it has much more clinical connotation, which I'm going to explain in a minute. Now, serum sodium, the normal range is 135 to 145. Now, who told us and how did we find which is the minimum in the population, which is the maximum in the population? We had no clue, you know. What we did was, what the scientists did, they took multiple random samples, they found the mean, and then they calculated the standard deviation. And the minus 2 standard deviation happens to be 135. The plus 2 standard deviation happens to be 145. So this is how you can find the range of the population. Okay, is it clear, Rudra? Now, if you have a small sample size, as in this blue color, your standard deviation will be huge, you know, because the sample size is small. But if your sample size is large, like in pink, the standard deviation will be much more narrow, much more close to the reality. That's why they say that for a good study, the sample size should be as large as possible. Now, I'm coming back to my initial theme of sample versus population. So you've done your study with a small sample and you found that your mean was 10.1. But does it mimic the population mean? We can never measure the population mean. It can never measure the population mean, okay? So this mean that you got is an estimate of the true population mean, okay? And the standard deviation of 1.7 is the estimate of the variability of the hemoglobin in the population. This is the clinical application of the mean and the standard deviation. Now, this is an important concept called as central limit theorem. Try to understand. Now, this is Calcutta. And supposing if we do a study in Jadavpur or Behala, we cannot be sure whether the same conclusion will be duplicated if we do the same study in a different sample of Calcutta or in Chennai or in Delhi. We cannot be sure. But what the central limit theorem says, that if you take random samples of same size, mind you, random samples of same size. So in this cartoon, I've taken 5 samples of 200 subjects in each, and then you calculate the mean in each sample, the sample means will be randomly distributed. Okay, this comes through the central limit theorem. And the clinical application is there is no need to repeat similar study from the same population. Just to reiterate, central limit theorem teaches us that if you take random samples of same size, the sample means will be randomly distributed, and hence there is no need to repeat similar study from the same population. So I've tried to depict everything visually. So there are 8 studies, 8 samples, estimated mean hemoglobin from 8 different parts of Calcutta. This is study 1, this is study 2, this is study 3, and these bars represent the various mean. And what the central limit theorem teaches us, that these means will be randomly, symmetrically distributed along the population mean. Okay. Now, this variation of the mean around the population mean mimics the standard curve, and this is called as the standard error of mean. And this is essentially the standard deviation of the mean. To make it more simple, so we got this mean of 10.1, which I showed you. The standard deviation in your one single study was 1.7. But then I calculated in that small study, the standard error of mean was 0.9. If you remember my initial normal curve of -2 standard deviation to +2 standard deviation, I have done the same thing here. So 10.1 is the mean, and then it's -2 in times 0.9, the standard error of mean, to 10.1 plus 2 times 0.9, which is 8.3 to 11.9. That means in the population, the true mean will lie somewhere between 8.3 to 11.9. Isn't this wonderful? It is time you forget and try to get over the statistics which you learned in PSM and enjoy the fun of statistics. So you have done just one study in your hospital, in your city, and with some computation, you can predict that in the population, the value will lie somewhere between these two numbers. And this is the fun of the statistics. Now moving on to the next central tendency, which we often measure, the median. So these are the 19 samples, random samples of hemoglobin. I'm sticking to the hemoglobin for this evening. Now what I do is I arrange the hemoglobin in ascending order. So minimum is 5.7, maximum is 13.4. Somewhere here is the middle, 9.2. So 50% of the samples are below 9.2, 50% are above 9.2. This is called as the median. Okay. Similarly, if I come here, 25% sample lie below this. And when I come here, 75% sample lie below this. So this range from 25th centile to 75th centile is called as interquartile range. Okay, I'll explore a little bit more. So supposing you take this set of median, these 7 numbers, and this set to another 7 numbers. If you eyeball the numbers, the only difference in set 1 and set 2 is that here is it 9, here is 88. Otherwise, they're exactly similar sets. So the median of this set is 5, and the median of this set is also 5, right? but the mean of the set 1 is 4.7. The mean of the second set is 16. The 16 is because of the one outlier, the large number 88. What this means is the median is not affected by numbers at the extremes, but mean is affected easily by outliers. So mean is a much sensitive indicator of the central tendency, but the beauty of median is it remains unfazed by the outlier numbers. So supposing Rudro has done a gastrectomy, 100 gastrectomy. So this is how you write his thesis or paper. The median number of nodes is 12 and interquartile range is 7 to 16. The 7 is the first quartile or the 25th percentile. And 16 is the third quartile or the 75th percentile. This is the median, 7 and 16. Now, this is something very common in statistics, the box and whisker plot, and very easy, you know, the visual. So this is the box, this is the whiskers, this is the median, the lower 25th percentile, these are called as hinge, is the 75th percentile. This is the minimum, and that is the maximum. So in our hemoglobin experiment, which I just showed you, the median will come to somewhere here, 9.2. The 75th is 11.2. The maximum is 13.4. And 7.9 is the 25th percentile. And 5.7 is the minimum. This box and whisker plot. Third measure of central tendency is something called as mode. The random numbers, I arrange them in ascending order and I find the three numbers, 7, are repeating the most. So this is the mode. Mode is the, just to remember, mode is the number which is used most often. So in this sample, 7 is the mode. Now if I draw you this curve, it's a little skewed, you know, it's not like random distribution. So 170, the red line, corresponds to the median because 50% is on the left, 50% is on the right. But this number 150 is where the most of the subjects are, you know, concentrated. So this is the mode and this is the median. Now, this is the graph I took from WHO website, the influenza in Southeast Asia. This is a bimodal distribution. The first peak is somewhere in the winter, 4th or 5th week, then end January. And this is sometimes the 30th week. That means October, you know, September, October. That is the time, the bimodal distribution. One more quiz. It's a normal distribution. And the red line stands for, those who have followed me will immediately tick all the above. This is the normal distribution, mean, median, mode. All the three are correct here. Okay? That's the beauty of random distribution. All the above. Now, we discussed about range, variance, standard deviation, and standard error. They describe the distribution, but they do not describe the nature of the distribution. How are the numbers distributed, right? For example, this is what we discussed, a symmetrical distribution, where the mean, median, mode are all same. Look into this graph. The mean is lesser than the median. This is a negative skew. On this side, the mean is more than the median. This is positive skew. I'll give you a clinical example. Right? I just discussed this graph. Now, if you look into the breast surgery for cancer, you know, most of the patients who had, you know, lumpectomy, mastectomy in our hospital, they are discharged on the first or second post-op day. A few who have had some complication or some fancy flap reconstruction, they tend to stay for 6 days, 10 days. So if I plot the hospital stay in the patients who have had breast surgery, most of the patients will go home on the day 1, day 2. And this is how the curve will develop. The mean will be somewhere here because of these outliers, flap reconstructions and complications. This is a left skewed or a positively skewed graph. And pink is the color of the breast cancer. So I've used pink color. On the other hand, if you look at the prostate cancer, it increases with the age. So most number of prostate cancer patients will be 65, 70 plus. They will be here. So median will be somewhere here. But some young patients also develop prostate cancer. So the mean will be shifted to the left. This is a negative skew. And blue is the color of the prostate cancer. And this is the hemoglobin, which I discussed a little earlier on. Red color, this will have a symmetrical distribution. Is it clear? I hope it is. Now, how do we know, say you're doing a thesis with inguinal hernia or varicose veins or, dressing material for infected wounds, how do you know whether your data is normally distributed? Because if you want to compare two sets of data, there are some tests which should be done if the data is normally distributed, like t-test. And if the data is not normally distributed, you should use a Mann-Whitney or something else. So it's very important to know whether your sample, the data is normally distributed. So draw a histogram, which can be drawn in Excel, I'll show later on, and just look at the mean and the median. If the mean and median are close to each other, that means the data is normally distributed. And for those of you who wants to do higher statistics, there are two tests called Shapiro-Wilk test or Kolmogorov-Smirnov test. You can use SPSS, or there are a lot of online calculator in the Google, and they can do it for free. The Shapiro-Wilk is quite popular. It's more reliable for less small sample size. Now, I'll give you an example of a fallacy in a published paper and why you need to know whether your data is normally distributed. The question is, can we use standard deviation for all kind of continuous data? Now, in this study published in 1994, the investigator used two kinds of oral rehydration solution. One had citrate, one did not have citrate. Now, the mean age was 13.5 in this group, and the other group was 16.9. Look at the 13.5. The standard deviation was 6.9. Now, if you remember this formula which I discussed before, mean plus minus 2 standard deviation will cover the range of the sample. If I do that, 13.5 plus minus 2 times 6.9, which is 13.5 plus minus 13.8. So the range of the age of these babies comes to minus 0.3 to 27.3. This is absurd. The age can never be minus 0.3. And this was published in a journal in 1994. The reason being, this data is not normally distributed. And unless your data is normally distributed, your standard deviation is just a complete waste of time. It will give you lots of absurd data, So you should not use standard deviation. And you must know whether your data is normally distributed. Now you can use SPSS, etc., but I want to keep it simple. I want to show you how you do it in Excel. Now, when you put all your figures here, all the 19 samples I've placed here. Now you go here, somewhere here, and there is something Excel option go to add ins and you add analysis tool pack. When you do that, under the data tab, a new icon comes up as data analysis. In that, pick up the descriptive statistics tab. Descriptive statistics, put your numbers, and immediately Excel gives you the minimum, the maximum, the mean hemoglobin, the median, the mode, the standard deviation, the standard error, and the 95% confidence level of the mean. Now, if you look at this, the mean was 9.4, the median is 9.2. They are very close. That means in this small sample, although small sample, the data was randomly distributed. From this data, I then drew a histogram, which I showed in last slide. So this is the histogram, and if you just imagine, it is almost normally distributed. And that is why the mean and mode are very close to each other. The simple Excel can do a lot of things. To summarize, we discussed this evening that there are two broad categories of data, categorical and continuous. The categorical can be nominal, the large groups, 4 groups, 5 groups. Dichotomous, that means 2 groups, yes and no, male, female, diabetic, non-diabetic, hypertensive, non-hypertensive. Ordinal, where you grade, response from 1 to 5. And continuous are figures, age, BMI, fasting blood sugar, height, weight. We also discussed the central tendency, mean and the median. So mean should be used in data which are randomly distributed. But if your data is not randomly distributed, best to use median with interquartile range. We did discuss range, and standard deviation is nothing but the variation of a sample along the mean, okay? But standard error of mean is essentially the standard deviation of the mean from where you can calculate the approximate range between which the true mean of the population will remain. And that is the beauty of the statistics.